You ever go through something so heavy, so unexpected, that it feels like your breath got knocked out of your soul? Not just a little inconvenience, but the kind of pain that makes you question your prayers, your faith, your strength. You sit there looking at God like, why would you let this happen to me? After everything I've done, after all the times I believed, after all the tears I've already cried, why more pain? And what you don't realize in that moment is it wasn't punishment, it was preparation. See, we've been conditioned to think that if we're hurting, it's because we messed up. It's because God is mad. It's because we didn't pray hard enough or fast long enough or live clean enough. But sometimes God loves you enough to let you hurt. Because pain has a way of teaching you things that comfort never could. Pain has a way of stripping away illusions, revealing truths, and exposing strengths you never knew you carried. I need you to understand, God is not afraid of your tears. He's not intimidated by your frustration. He's not distant when you're in the valley. In fact, sometimes he leads you there on purpose because what's in that valley is the training ground for where you're going next. And I know that doesn't make sense when you're in it. When you're in it, all you can see is the loss. All you can feel is the sting. All you can hear is the silence. And it feels like abandonment, but it's really alignment. You think you're falling apart, but you're actually falling into place. The very thing you're asking him to take away is the thing he's using to shape you. You prayed for strength, but strength doesn't come wrapped in comfort. It comes wrapped in struggle. You prayed for wisdom, but wisdom is often birthed from mistakes and disappointments. You prayed for faith, but faith only grows in the soil of uncertainty. There's a reason why certain doors closed in your face, why certain people walked away, why certain opportunities slipped through your fingers. It's not because you weren't good enough. It's because God knew what you didn't. He knew that if you stayed in that place, you would settle for less than what he had for you. He knew that if you kept holding on to what you thought you needed, you would never discover what you truly deserved. Sometimes the hurt is God's way of shaking you awake. You got too comfortable in something that wasn't your destiny. You got attached to people who were never assigned to your future. And God, in his mercy, will allow the pain that forces you to move, because if it didn't hurt, you'd still be standing in a place that was killing you slowly. I know you wanted it to work out. I know you prayed to last. I know you thought they were the one. That job was the dream. That season was the peak. But God saw beyond the moment. He saw the hidden cracks. He saw the unspoken betrayals. He saw the way your light was dimming to fit in a place you were never meant to belong. And so he let it hurt, not to destroy you, but to deliver you. You may not believe this right now, but there's going to come a day when you'll thank him for not giving you what you thought you needed. There's going to come a day when you look back and realize that if you had stayed where you were, you would have missed the greater thing he had prepared. You're going to see how every tear watered the soil for a blessing that's bigger than anything you imagine. It's easy to praise God when you're holding the blessing, but the real test is whether you can trust him in the breaking, whether you can believe that even in the dark, he's still working, that even when your heart feels like it's in pieces, he's still the potter, shaping you into something stronger, wiser, and more anointed than before. So don't confuse the hurt with punishment. Don't assume the delay is denial. Sometimes the delay is protection. Sometimes the no is mercy. Sometimes the heartbreak is the path to healing. You may not see it now, but this pain, this exact pain, is producing something in you that couldn't have been built any other way. And when the blessing comes, it won't just make you smile, it'll make you weep, because you'll remember what it cost you to get there. You'll remember the nights you almost gave up. You'll remember the prayers you thought bounced off the ceiling. And you'll realize that every moment of hurt was actually him getting you ready for what was already yours. There's a certain kind of breaking that doesn't come from the enemy, and it doesn't come from life just happening. It comes from God himself. And I know that's a hard truth to swallow because we've been taught to see him only as the one who blesses, the one who heals, the one who restores. But the same hands that bless you are the hands that will sometimes break you. Not because he's cruel, but because he knows what's hiding in the parts of you that you keep trying to protect. We love the idea of being used by God, but we don't talk enough about the process of being prepared by him. Preparation isn't pretty. Sometimes he will allow the breaking because the version of you that exists right now isn't equipped for the weight of the blessing you're asking for. You're praying for increase, but he knows your foundation can't carry it yet. You're praying for greater influence, but he knows there are fragile places inside you that can't withstand the pressure. So he starts breaking, not to destroy you, but to rebuild you into someone who can handle where he's taking you. Breaking is violent. It shatters the images you had of how your life should look. It dismantles the plans you were holding on to. It strips away the comfort of what you've always known. And that's why it feels so personal. That's why you question him, why you cry until your soul aches, why you want to run from the very one you once ran to. But the truth is, when God is breaking you, he's working on something deeper than your emotions. He's reaching into your habits, your mindsets, your fears, your insecurities, every place where you've been hiding, and he's removing what can't go with you into the next season. You've been holding onto a version of yourself that's too small for your calling. You've been wearing an identity shaped by people's opinions, by old wounds, by failures you still haven't forgiven yourself for. And as long as you keep clinging to that, you'll never step into the fullness of who you were created to be. That's why he lets the breaking come, because sometimes the only way to free you from what's false is to strip it away until all that's left is the truth. We fight the breaking because we think it's loss. But what if it's really love? What if the very thing that's falling apart is the thing that was blocking your blessing? You thought you needed that relationship, that circle, that position to feel whole. But God knew those things were shaping you into someone less than you are. He knew you were bending, shrinking, silencing yourself just to keep them. And so he started breaking, not the real you, but the image you were clinging to. And here's the thing about God's breaking. It's strategic. He doesn't break you where it will destroy you. He breaks you where it will set you free. He applies pressure in the exact places where you've been relying on something other than him. He exposes the weak spots so you'll stop pretending they don't exist. Because if you go into your next season with those cracks hidden, the weight of the blessing will crush you. But if you let him rebuild you now, you'll carry it with grace. I know it hurts. I know it feels like you've lost more than you can ever recover from. But I need you to see that the breaking is the bridge. It's what takes you from the person you were to the person you're becoming. It's what transforms your faith from theory to testimony. It's what turns your prayers from God, give me more, to God, make me ready. When you look back, you'll see that what he was doing wasn't tearing you apart. He was removing what was never you in the first place. The insecurities, the fear of failure, the constant need for validation, the lies you believed about your worth. Those are the things that had to go. And he knew you'd never release them willingly, so he allowed the breaking to force the separation. Because when he rebuilds you, you're going to be unshakable. You're going to walk into rooms you used to feel unworthy of and know you belong. You're going to speak with authority in spaces where you used to be silent. You're going to carry a confidence that isn't rooted in appearance or approval, but in the quiet knowing that you survived the breaking and came out stronger. So if you're in the middle of it right now, don't curse the process. Don't run from the discomfort. Let him do what he's doing, even if it means losing what you thought you couldn't live without. Because on the other side of the breaking, You're going to meet a version of yourself you didn't know existed, and she's stronger, she's wiser, she's ready. There's a space between the hurt and the healing that nobody really prepares you for. We talk about the moment pain hits, and we talk about the moment the blessing arrives, but what about that in between? That quiet, drawn out season where nothing seems to be moving, where prayers feel like they're evaporating in the air before they reach heaven, where the silence is louder than any answer you've ever heard. That's the part that tests you the most, because it's not just about surviving the pain. It's about surviving the waiting. That silence can feel like abandonment. You start thinking, if God really cared, wouldn't he have answered me by now? Wouldn't he have opened a door? Wouldn't I see at least a little sign that things are changing? But here's what I need you to understand. Silence doesn't mean absence. Sometimes it means God is doing his deepest work in the quiet, away from your sight. Some blessings aren't built in front of you. They're prepared behind the scenes until the time is right. We're so used to movement, to evidence, to proof that when God slows everything down, we panic. We assume something went wrong when in reality, he's making sure everything goes exactly right. That stillness is where he reshapes you, where he teaches you to hear his voice in ways you never could when life was loud. The silence isn't empty, it's intentional. You see, healing is not instant. You don't just wake up one day free from the weight of what happened to you. God knows that if he rushed the process, you'd walk into your blessing still bleeding from old wounds. And so he lets the quiet stretch. He allows that pause between hurt and healing so you can release what you were holding, so your heart can rest, so your spirit can learn how to breathe again without needing to control everything. It's in that quiet season where your faith is refined, when you can't see what he's doing, when you can't trace his hand. Will you still trust his heart? Can you believe he's working even when nothing around you is changing? That's where faith moves from being something you talk about to something you actually live. And I get it. The waiting feels unfair. It feels like everyone else is moving forward while you're stuck in place. You scroll through other people's lives, and it seems like they're receiving everything you've been praying for, but you don't know the process they had to walk through. And you don't know the preparation God is still finishing for you. Just because your blessing hasn't arrived yet doesn't mean it's not on the way. Delay is not denial. It's development. If you're in that silence right now, you might not realize how much God is actually protecting you. He's holding certain doors closed because he knows what's behind them would undo everything he's been building in you. He's slowing you down because the place he's taking you isn't ready yet. Or maybe you're not ready yet and it's not punishment, it's mercy. You might feel like nothing is happening, but trust me, things are shifting. Just because you can't hear the construction doesn't mean the foundation isn't being laid. Sometimes God has to let your roots grow deeper in the dark so that when you finally rise, nothing can shake you. The silence is the soil where resilience grows. And here's the thing, you'll only appreciate the blessing fully when you've endured the waiting. You'll only value it deeply when you've had to trust him for it without proof. That space between hurt and healing is where you learn to lean on him, not just for what he gives, but for who he is. It's where you stop treating him like a vending machine and start knowing him as your anchor. When the blessing finally comes, and it will, you'll see why the silence was necessary. You'll look back and realize that it wasn't wasted time. It was sacred time. God was building you in ways that the blessing itself could never do. The healing didn't just happen when the pain stopped. It started in the quiet, when you learned to rest in him without needing all the answers. So if you're there right now, caught in the middle, unsure of what's next, don't despise the silence. Let it do its work. Let it strip away your fears. Let it teach you patience. Let it draw you closer to the one who's been with you the whole time. The waiting might not feel like progress, but one day you'll see it was the most important part of the journey. When you're deep in the middle of pain, it's hard to imagine anything on the other side could be worth what you're going through. You tell yourself, even if I make it through this, I'll never be the same. And you're right, you won't be the same. But what you don't realize yet is that the change isn't the loss you think it is. The change is the upgrade you never saw coming. Because when God blesses you after the breaking, the blessing is bigger than the bruise. We tend to think healing means going back to how things used to be. But God's blessings don't work like that. He's not interested in taking you back. He's interested in taking you further. That's why the blessing isn't just about replacing what was lost. It's about redeeming it. It's about making the bruise part of the testimony, about showing you that the very thing that almost broke you will become the reason you walk with more power, more authority, and more confidence than ever before. You're going to see one day that the bruise didn't make you weaker. It marked you as someone who has survived. That mark will become a signal to others that healing is possible, that restoration is real. People will look at you and think, if they made it through that, maybe I can make it too. And you'll realize that what you went through wasn't just about you. It was about the lives you were called to impact. See, bruises fade, but the strength you gain from surviving doesn't. And when the blessing comes, it will have a weight to it. Not the kind of weight that crushes you, but the kind that grounds you. The kind that makes you carry it with gratitude because you know the cost. You'll stop treating blessings like something you're entitled to and start treating them like something you've been entrusted with. That's the thing. Pain changes how you hold a blessing. Before the bruise, you might have taken it for granted, rushed past it, or compared it to what someone else has. But after you've walked through loss, betrayal, heartbreak, or disappointment, you hold blessings differently. You pay attention. You see the beauty in what others overlook. You're more patient, more appreciative, more protective. You understand that what God gave you is not just a gift. It's a reminder that you made it. And here's the wild part. Sometimes the bruise is what makes the blessing even sweeter. You learn how to laugh again, not because everything is perfect, but because you felt what it's like to cry until you couldn't breathe. You learn how to love again, not because everyone is trustworthy, but because you've experienced the ache of loss and decided love is still worth it. You learn how to dream again, not because life hasn't hurt you, but because you've discovered that hurt can't kill hope unless you let it. That's redemption. That's what it looks like when God flips the script on your pain. He doesn't just heal you. He uses the bruise as part of the blessing. The pain becomes proof. The bruise becomes a badge. And every time you look at what you have now, you remember the road you walked to get there. And you realize you're stronger than you ever thought. I know you might be in the thick of it right now, and all you can see is the bruise. It's fresh, it's tender, and you wish it would just fade already. But don't rush it. The bruise is proof that you survived the hit. And if you survive the hit, you can trust that the blessing is already in motion. God doesn't allow bruises without also setting up breakthroughs. When that blessing finally lands in your hands, it's not going to just make you feel better. It's going to make you whole. It will speak to every place in you that wondered if God forgot, if he still saw you, if he still had good plans for you. It will answer those questions without a single word, because the blessing will stand there as living proof that he was working the whole time. You might not be able to see it yet, but I promise you, what's coming is so much greater than what was lost. And when it arrives, it won't just sit on top of the pain like a bandage. It will reach into the very place that hurt the most, and it will heal it from the inside out. And when you hold it, you'll know for sure the blessing is bigger than the bruise. Scars have a way of telling the truth, even when we try to hide it. You can try to cover them up. You can explain them away. You can act like they're not there, but they still carry a story. And God has a way of leaving the scar not to shame you, but to remind you that you made it through something that should have taken you out. He could have erased every trace of what happened, but he knows that if you lost the scar, you might also lose the testimony. We often want healing to mean we look untouched, like the pain never happened, like the loss, the betrayal. The heartbreak left no evidence, but God doesn't work that way. When he heals, he doesn't erase the scar, he redeems it. He turns it into a marker of his faithfulness, a visible reminder of his power. A sign that you've been in the fire, but didn't burn. That you've been through the storm, but didn't drown. The scar is proof that the wound closed. Proof that you didn't stay in the place where you were broken. Proof that the story didn't end where it hurt the most. And if you let him, he'll use that scar to speak to somebody else who's still in the middle of their wound. Because sometimes people don't need to hear your advice. They need to see your survival. They need to see that you're still standing, still breathing, still moving forward, even with the evidence of where you've been. There's a humility that comes with a scar. It keeps you from forgetting what God brought you through. It keeps you from looking at someone else's struggle and thinking you're better than them. Because every time you see it, you remember the nights you almost gave up, the days you barely made it through, the prayers you prayed with trembling hands. And instead of hiding that scar, you start to see it as a weapon. Not a weapon to hurt, but a weapon to fight back against the lie that says healing is impossible. You can't preach about deliverance if you've never been bound. You can't talk about restoration if you've never lost anything. And you can't carry the kind of authority that shakes hell if you've never been through something that tried to destroy you. That's why God lets the scar stay, because it carries a weight that only comes from lived experience. And here's the thing about scars. They're no longer sensitive like the wound once was. You can touch them without the same pain. That means you can talk about what happened without breaking all over again. It doesn't mean you forget, but it means you're free from the sting. That's how you know the healing is real. The pain is gone, but the proof remains. Some of you have been trying to hide your scars because you think they make you look weak. But what if they're the very thing that makes you strong? What if the person you're meant to encourage will believe you not because you're polished and perfect, but because they can see that you've been through some things? Your scar gives you credibility in the places God has called you to speak. It tells people, I've been where you are, and I know the way out. And I know sometimes you wish you could go back to the version of yourself that didn't have to carry this mark. You wish you could erase the moment that caused it. But the truth is, you wouldn't be who you are now without it. That moment, that wound, that scar, it shaped you. It taught you resilience. It taught you how to lean on God when you had nothing else. It taught you that even when you're broken, you're not beyond repair. One day, you'll look at that scar and feel gratitude instead of grief. You'll see it as a sign of God's mercy, a sign of his ability to take the ugliest parts of our story and make them beautiful. You'll realize that without the scar, you might have forgotten how far you've come. And you'll stand in rooms you once only dreamed of, speaking life into people who are still bleeding, showing them that healing is possible because you are the living proof. It's a strange thing when you finally reach the day you can thank God for something you once begged him to take away. You don't see it coming. You don't wake up one morning with instant clarity and joy about the thing that broke you. It happens slowly, almost quietly, like healing itself. One day you're looking at the same memory that used to make your stomach twist and your eyes fill with tears. And instead of pain, there's peace. Instead of bitterness, there's gratitude. In the beginning, you can't imagine ever feeling that way. All you know is the ache. All you know is the prayers you prayed with desperation, the way you pleaded with him to change it, to fix it, to make it stop. And when it didn't happen the way you wanted, it felt like betrayal. You thought his silence meant he didn't care, when in reality, it meant he cared too much to give you what you were asking for. We like to think we know what's best for us, but the truth is we only see from here to the next step. God sees the whole road, every bend, every detour, every pitfall you can't see yet. And sometimes what we're begging him to preserve is the very thing that would destroy us if he let us keep it. That's why the now or the not yet feels so painful. It's a protection we can't recognize in the moment. But when the blessing finally shows up, when the thing he had planned for you all along comes into view, you begin to understand. You start to see the threads connecting the pain to the purpose. You start to realize that if he had answered your prayer the way you wanted, you wouldn't be standing in the place you are now. And then that thank you begins to rise, not the casual kind you give when something goes your way, but the deep, from the gut kind that only comes from surviving something you thought would break you. Gratitude after pain is different. It's richer, it's heavier in the best way, because you know what it cost you to get here. You know the nights you cried yourself to sleep. You know the moments you thought you'd never smile again. And now to see yourself living, breathing, loving, thriving, it humbles you. It makes you realize that the pain didn't win. And neither did the enemy. This kind of gratitude changes your posture. You stop demanding that God explain himself every time something hurts because you've learned he always has a bigger plan. You stop holding on to people, places, and situations that he's clearly trying to move you from because you've learned that losing something doesn't always mean you've lost. Sometimes it means you've been set free, and it's not that you forget what happened. You remember it clearly, but the memory has shifted. It's no longer the evidence of God's absence. It's the evidence of his wisdom. You start to see how every no was connected to a better yes. How every closed door kept you from walking into harm. How every delay was a divine setup for something greater. One day you'll tell the story of what you went through, and the people listening won't be able to believe you're talking about yourself. They won't see the pain in your face anymore, just the light that came after. And in that moment, you'll realize the reason you can speak about it with such peace is because you've already thanked him for it. You've already surrendered the outcome to him. You've already embraced the truth that what he gave you after was so much better than what you thought you wanted before. That's the beauty of God's process. He doesn't just replace what was lost, he upgrades it. He doesn't just heal the wound, he makes sure you come out stronger than before it happened. And by the time you get to the blessing, you wouldn't trade the journey, as hard as it was, because you know you wouldn't be the same without it. And that's when the thank you comes easy, not because it didn't hurt, not because it wasn't hard, but because you can see clearly now it had to happen this way. You had to go through that to get here.